I'm going to introduce next Phil Marshley. Phil has written extensively over a long period on the Middle East and on Palestine, and indeed has quite extensive connections with those involved in movements in the region. So, Phil.
Thank you, Rob. And it's really great to see people here again on such a cold day. But just a couple of days after, we had a very, very fine demonstration at Dorset County Hospital, at our hospital, which involved all sorts of hospital staff. There were consultants, there were junior doctors, there were radiographers and dietitians. It was a really splendid expression of solidarity with the health workers of Gaza from the health workers of Dorchester. Like you, I've been trying to follow the events day by day as they become more destructive and more chilling. And I was looking yesterday at the Israeli newspaper, the Jerusalem Post, and it carried an article in which one of the right-wing ministers of Netanyahu's government, a guy called Bezalel Smotrich, declared that Hamas are fascists. Actually, he used the word Nazis. He said, Hamas are Nazis, and we are going to destroy Gaza. I thought that was particularly interesting, because this man is so right-wing that he has described himself as a fascist homophobe. Those were his own words. And it made me think about this problem of the extreme right and the fact that in the Israeli government today, chillingly, there are people who stand in the tradition of European fascism of the 20th century. I was in Beirut in 1982 when Israel invaded Lebanon, and I can remember clearly the Israeli fighter jets circling over the city and then firing their rockets into a largely defenseless population. And they then launched the siege of Beirut, which went on throughout the summer until in September 1982, the Israelis allied a Lebanese organization called the Kataib, which was the closest thing to a fascist organization in the Arab world. And I use this term very, very carefully. They murdered 2,000 Palestinians in September 1982 in the Sabra and Shatila massacres. Some people will remember them. And they did it with the collaboration and encouragement of the Israeli leader, later to be Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon. Have the Israelis completely forgotten or tried to rub out those experiences, the cold-blooded murder in 1982, the years and years of assaults on the West Bank of by the settlers of the Palestinian population? I believe I'm right in saying that 250 Palestinians have been killed since October the 7th on the West Bank, leaving aside the horrendous thousands in Gaza. And these ministers in Netanyahu's government want to describe Palestinian resistance as Nazis. The hypocrisy is absolutely chilling. But they're locked into this logic where they're prepared apparently to do anything in Gaza. And just one final thought. I think everyone here will be familiar with the events of the Nakba of 1948, when about 750,000 Palestinians were dispossessed and expelled by the militias of the movement which went on to form the Israeli state. What's happened in the last couple of weeks means that those numbers of 1948 are being dwarfed by the numbers who are dispossessed and now forced onto the move from north to southern Gaza. This does indeed look like a Nakba 2. And our politicians are observing this. Our political leaders are observing this with apparent approval. Our Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition, very likely to be Prime Minister in this country, are prepared to endorse this ghastly mass dispossession, which begins to look more and more genuinely like a genocide. Again, a word I think we have to use with great care. Those of us, particularly with Jewish heritage and the knowledge of the mid-20th century, have to use that word with great care. But the offensive increasingly looks like one in which the mobilization of a powerful state against overwhelmingly vulnerable people, probably with the attempt to expel them over the Rafah crossing into Egypt or into the Sinai desert, increasingly looks on the cards. And this is why all over the country, indeed all over the world, our protests like this are of profound importance. We live in a little town here, but it's a town in which all sorts of people have come forward, and indeed from our villages. I see people from the villages here too, and that's great. And we really do need to maintain our resolve. As Rob has said, we have a meeting on Tuesday in town, but next Saturday there will also be another national demonstration, and we invite everybody to join us. There'll be a bus. The details will be circulated. People in Gaza do see the scale and anger and solidarity from those demonstrations. So let's stand shoulder to shoulder with our brothers and sisters in Gaza. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Phil.